With the influx of 4K 60 re-releases and a lack of meaningful exclusives, it can feel like the industry is in a bit of a holding pattern right now. Still, scour what's confirmed, and we do know a ton of beloved franchises are coming back. For this list's criteria, I'm classing their away period as more than a console cycle. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 9 video game franchises returning on PS5, Xbox Series XS, and Switch. First up, an honorable mention: Grand Theft Auto. Yep, the big lol with my criteria is that GTA would totally qualify. Its last installment was on PS3 and Xbox 360, with the go-to omnipresent delights of GTA Online being a port of a 7th generation game that people are still playing in 2021. GTA 6 will see the franchise return proper to PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, but with another GTA 5 upgrade still scheduled first, who even knows when that will be? Number 9, Skate 4. Right now, it's hard to say what will happen with the next main Skate game, as when EA announced another installment was coming, we were right on the cusp of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2's remake being released. Since then, Activision took the boneheaded move of shifting this latter game's development teams onto other projects, largely canning hopes for future installments in the series, and in a wider sense quashing the notion of the video game skateboarding craze returning in full. Still, EA are yet to say anything about Skate 4 other than it exists, though according to Chief Studios Officer Laura Meal, the newly formed dev team were called full circle because she and EA want to prioritize getting back to a state where their reputation was a bit more positive. For Skate itself, other than copycat/innovator Session and the likes of Ollie Ollie, skateboarding games have all but gone away, though Tony Hawk's insane sales does mean there's an audience hungry for more. Number 8, Beyond Good and Evil 2. Remember Beyond Good and Evil? A one-off action-adventure from 2003, the sequel felt like something Ubisoft only greenlit to stave off hostile acquisition from Vivendi across 2017 and 2018. Very much a "look, you can't swallow us up, we're a family with tons of projects in the works" kind of feel. That energy has since dissipated into very few follow-up announcements, and creative lead Michel Ancel quitting Ubisoft altogether at the end of 2020. As it stands, the game is still in active production. We've seen a couple of tech demos, and Ancel reportedly sketched out the entirety of the game's plot before departing, but that's about it. Still, of all the projects longtime Ubi fans are calling out for, Beyond Good and Evil was the most sought after and will be coming to new hardware eventually. Number 7, Metroid Prime 4. As will be the case for a lot of the games here, we have things that were announced well ahead of anything tangible or that could otherwise be shown, and instead, like with Metroid Prime 4, we've had nothing but a logo for 4 years. First announced in 2017 to rapturous applause, Metroid Prime 4's development was completely restarted 2 years later, with the IP taken off Bandai Namco and given back to original trilogy devs Retro Studios. Nintendo profusely apologized, but fans rejoiced that the team behind such a beloved IP was back in the saddle. As of October 2020, Retro was still hiring staff to work on an emotional story, making it seem like this could be another cutscene-focused Metroid like Other M, albeit with a far better control scheme. Either way, Metroid is on its way to Switch, and with the franchise's 35th anniversary hitting later in 2021, maybe that's when we'll finally get a sizable update. That or the Metroid Prime Trilogy collection that literally leaked years ago finally comes out. Number 6, FABLE. One of the only Xbox Series X exclusives that we can point to as being in the works, FABLE is getting the full reboot treatment courtesy of Playground Games. In development since at least 2018 when it first leaked, the very idea of a FABLE without Peter Molyneux is fascinating to me, especially seeing as we've been here before with FABLE Legends, and Xbox canned that despite it being finished. For the new FABLE, very little is known, and Playground are of course the developers of Forza Horizon. Though it feels like a totally out of nowhere combination of studio, expertise and franchise, Playground at least hail from the south of England just like Lionhead did, and can hopefully carry on the series' signature British wit. Number 5, The Elder Scrolls 6. Yes, it's almost been a decade since Skyrim, but sadly the next main Elder Scrolls likely still won't be with us for another year or so. Why? Because Bethesda have Starfield to drum up and show off. It being their first new IP in over 20 years, at least we know once that's out the way, it's full steam ahead on continuing where Elder Scrolls main games left off. Fascinatingly though, the industry is in a completely different place than back in 2011. A Skyrim-sized world is still jaw-dropping, but far more commonplace. Where the sheer amount of things you could see and do in an Elder Scrolls used to be genuinely mind-blowing, we're now on the other side of The Witcher 3, or even something like Kingdom Come Deliverance. This is the longest period of time Bethesda have ever taken between installments, and that's also down to them overhauling what Bethesda is as an entity in gaming. The modern-day Bethesda is a publishing powerhouse, resurrector of Wolfenstein, Doom, and Quake, and someone who rightfully got dragged for messing up their first attempt at a live service with Fallout 76. Elder Scrolls 6 will see them go back to a legacy IP from a completely different vantage point, and I can't wait to see how that turns out. Number 4. System Shock 3. A beloved but largely overlooked title in the console space, System Shock was to an entire generation of PC players what Bioshock was to everybody else. Where the System Shock titles didn't actively recalibrate how to even tell stories in video games, Ken Levine's sequel left a longing for more that wasn't satiated for 16 years. With legendary game dev Warren Spector returning to the IP, while 2015 saw the announcement of a System Shock 3, the game has been through development hell and back since. Original publisher Starbreeze ran into financial trouble, leading to a trickle-down effect of developers' other side having to lay employees off in a bid to continue working on the IP. Chinese conglomerate Tencent eventually stepped in 2020, providing the necessary funds to get development back on track, and Spector has confirmed production is continuing. With Warren Spector himself being responsible for Deus Ex, Wing Commander, and of course System Shock, his involvement alone makes this one to keep an eye on. Number 3. Bioshock 4. Yep, there's gonna be a 4th Bioshock game, and it's even been announced, just without any screenshots, a trailer, or even an official logo. Instead, mention of Bioshock 4 came from a 2K press release in 2019, confirming new studio Cloud Chamber would be helming the project, though it wouldn't be coming for a few years, putting the release squarely on now current tech. Former creative director Ken Levine remains long gone, working on a branching narrative sci-fi RPG he's had in the works for the entire 8th generation. For Bioshock 4 then, a Cloud Chamber job listing noted that the game won't be set in Rapture or Columbia, but a new and fantastical world, with a stunning narrative and systems-driven experience powering you through. Considering Bioshock Infinite's more out there premise, i.e. there's a boss fight against a ghost and another against a giant oversized Birdman, the jury's out on whether Bioshock 4 goes back to explaining every last part of the experience like the first two, or goes full on magical realism. Number 2. Indiana Jones and James Bond. It's super easy to forget, largely because EA and Activision turned into such villains across the 8th generation that they used to use their money for good. James Bond games were a dime a dozen, with the likes of 007 Nightfire being an entire generation's GoldenEye, or Everything or Nothing and From Russia with Love being incredible action games in their own right. Since 2006 and 2012 respectively though, both companies moved away from licensed Bond tie-ins, until a surprise announcement from IO Interactive confirmed they'd be taking up the mantle almost a decade later. As for Indiana Jones, January 2021 saw the reformation of Lucasfilm Games, the original name of the team before LucasArts, and a partnership with Bethesda and Machine Games greenlit the first console Indiana Jones game since 2009. Machine Games are experts in shooting Nazis thanks to the immaculate Wolfenstein games, and with Indy and Bond both returning, it feels like we're on the cusp of a film franchise tie-in boom that will no doubt unfurl across the coming generation. And number 1, Perfect Dark. Every last thing about the revamped Perfect Dark should have you salivating. First up, as an IP, it's one of the coolest spy thriller setups going, with Joanna Dark an iconic character and Rare's work on the original still being a ludicrously fun and fluid shooter today. Second, and even more excitingly, we have a new dev team formed from various veterans of the industry. Named The Initiative, this team of people who themselves will have grown up being blown away by Perfect Dark anyway, is comprised of people who worked on Red Dead Redemption 2, Tomb Raider and 2018's God of War. Also involved are staff from BioWare, Respawn, Naughty Dog, Insomniac and more. Basically, though there are many people who only know Perfect Dark today in name only, Microsoft are making a big play for this series exclusive to be a huge deal. With the talent behind it and the potential for another huge Xbox exclusive FPS, this is one of the most anticipated titles of the generation. And those are just a handful of awesome franchises returning on the next generation of consoles. Let me know your favorites down in the comments below, and please check out the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.